She walked into the office, looking just like any other day, but today was different. Today, everything would change. Sarah Johnson, dressed in a simple navy blouse and beige pants, her hair neatly pulled back, had become the target of Michael Roberts' cruel jokes once again. Michael, the company's CEO, had made it clear from day one that Sarah didn't belong in the same room as him. She was just a plain employee, and her simple wardrobe was an easy target for his mocking eyes. As she moved quietly toward her desk, she couldn't help but overhear his snide comments to the other executives. "Look at Sarah, still trying to blend in with us," he'd sneered. The others chuckled, unaware that Sarah had heard every word. She had learned to stay quiet, to let their words roll off her back. But today, something inside her shifted. The snickers, the condescending smiles, the assumptions that she was just another office worker. It was all too much. Sarah had always kept a low profile at the company, staying in the background, keeping to herself. But Michael's repeated insults, especially in front of the new hires, had pushed her to the brink. "She's just a simple woman, isn't she?" he'd said once, loud enough for Sarah to hear. As if her value was tied to how she looked or how much she earned. Little did he know, Sarah's life was far more than a simple office job. It wasn't the first time Sarah had been belittled. She had endured Michael's jokes before, comments about her clothes, her lack of a fancy car, her humble attitude. But today, something inside her snapped. She wasn't just Sarah Johnson, the quiet woman in the office anymore. She was someone else entirely, someone Michael had no idea about. She had worked in the shadows for years, and while he and the others were busy underestimating her, Sarah had been quietly building her empire. She didn't need a fancy car or an expensive suit to show her worth. She had something far more valuable, the ability to change everything with just one decision. As Michael prepared to give his usual speech about the company's direction, Sarah felt a surge of determination. She'd had enough of being ignored, of being made to feel small. Today, everything would be different. Sarah took a deep breath and stood up. The room fell silent for a moment as she moved toward the front of the room. She wasn't just going to sit there anymore. She was going to show them who she really was. Michael didn't even notice her approach. With a quiet but firm voice, Sarah interrupted him. "I think it's time you knew something about me, Michael," she said, her eyes meeting his. His confident smile faltered. The room seemed to hold its breath. "I'm not just an employee here," she continued. "I'm the new owner of this company." The shock that spread across Michael's face was priceless. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. The executives around the table exchanged confused looks. Sarah felt a calm rush over her as she added, "The decision I made wasn't just about business. It's about proving that you should never judge someone based on how they look or what you think you know about them." Silence hung in the air as Michael's face turned pale. His arrogant demeanor had disappeared, replaced by a look of sheer disbelief. Sarah had never been just the quiet girl in the office. She had been the one building something bigger than they could ever imagine. And now, they would have to respect her, whether they liked it or not. Michael's stammering words died on his lips as Sarah stood tall, not as the woman they had mocked, but as the woman who had the power to change everything. The next morning, Sarah arrived at the office with a calm confidence that had settled over her overnight. She walked past the usual crowd of co-workers who barely noticed her, their casual, dismissive glances slipping off her like water off a duck's back. But Sarah wasn't focused on them anymore. She wasn't focused on anything except the meeting that would take place in just a few hours. Michael was waiting for her, unaware that today was the day everything would change. As she walked into the elevator, she caught a glimpse of herself in the polished metal doors. For a moment, she hesitated. But only for a moment. The woman staring back at her wasn't the timid Sarah who had been dismissed countless times. She was someone stronger, someone with power and control. And today, she would take her place at the head of the table. The elevator door slid open, and Sarah stepped into the lobby. She could feel the tension in the air. The usual buzz of the office was missing, replaced by a heavy silence as the employees seemed to be holding their breath. They all knew about the meeting, of course, but none of them knew what to expect. Michael was already in the conference room, as he always was, preparing his agenda for the day. He looked up when Sarah entered, his eyes immediately narrowing with that familiar, condescending glance. He made no attempt to greet her. "You're late," he said coldly, his tone dismissive. Sarah simply smiled. She knew exactly what he was thinking. He thought she was just another employee, someone who would never challenge him. But today, she wasn't going to back down. "I'm sorry, Michael," she replied, her voice steady and calm. "But I think you'll find that I've been right on time." Michael blinked in confusion, but before he could respond, the door to the conference room opened, and the rest of the executives began filing in. Sarah could feel the eyes of everyone on her, their judgment already in motion. As she walked past Michael to the head of the table, she couldn't help but notice the way the room seemed to shift. The executives, once indifferent, were now whispering amongst themselves, their curiosity piqued. They couldn't put their finger on it, but something was different about Sarah today. She took her seat at the head of the table, watching as Michael fumbled with his papers, clearly thrown off by her sudden confidence. He opened his mouth to speak, but Sarah raised her hand, stopping him in his tracks. "Before we get started, Michael, I think there's something you should know." Michael, already looking irritated, barely spared her a glance. "We have a lot to cover today, Sarah. Can we get to the point?" Sarah's smile never wavered. "I'm afraid you're mistaken. Today is the day you learn the truth." She paused for effect, letting the words hang in the air. The executives were now fully alert, their eyes flicking between Sarah and Michael. Michael's face grew more tense as Sarah pulled a folder from her bag and slid it across the table toward him. He opened it, his brow furrowing as he scanned the documents. The room fell silent as he processed what he was reading. Sarah leaned back in her chair, her posture relaxed but firm. "I'm the new owner of this company," she said, her voice calm but carrying an undeniable weight. The air in the room seemed to freeze. Michael's mouth moved, but no words came out. He looked from the papers in front of him to Sarah, and then to the shocked faces of the other executives. For the first time since Sarah had known him, Michael had nothing to say. His arrogance, his sense of superiority, all of it had vanished in an instant. Sarah sat back, watching the realization dawn on him. The same man who had dismissed her, belittled her, and assumed she was just another simple woman, now had to come to terms with the fact that she held the power in this room. The executives, once passive observers, now shifted uneasily in their seats. Some exchanged glances, while others struggled to hide their surprise. Sarah could feel the weight of their gazes, but she didn't flinch. She wasn't here to impress them. She wasn't here to win them over. She was here to take control. The silence stretched on, thick and palpable. Michael opened his mouth again, but still, no words came. He looked around the room, perhaps hoping someone would speak up, but the room remained unervingly quiet. Sarah's calm demeanor remained as she addressed the room. "This company has been mismanaged for far too long, and I'm here to fix it. I'm here to lead this company to success, not just for the shareholders, but for everyone who's ever been looked down upon. I'll prove to you all that respect isn't earned through power or money. It's earned through character and action." The room was still, but Sarah knew this was only the beginning. Today, Michael had learned the hard way that appearances could be deceiving, and the most underestimated person in the room could also be the one holding all the cards. The tension in the room was thick, the silence almost deafening. Michael sat at the head of the table, his eyes darting between the documents in front of him and the people gathered around. He couldn't wrap his mind around what had just been revealed. Sarah, the woman he had belittled for so long, the woman he had never once taken seriously, was now the one holding the reins. The same woman he'd thought of as nothing more than a simple, quiet employee had just completely flipped the power dynamics of the company. The executives in the room shifted uncomfortably in their seats, some of them unsure whether to speak or remain silent. Sarah could feel their eyes on her, but she didn't flinch. She had been underestimated her whole life, but not anymore. Today, she would show them what it meant to be in control. Michael's face, once full of smug confidence, now looked pale and strained. He opened his mouth, trying to regain his composure, but the words wouldn't come. For the first time, Sarah saw the arrogance that had fueled him crumble before her eyes. He wasn't the powerful figure he thought he was. She was the one with the power now, and she knew it. Sarah leaned forward slightly, her voice steady and clear as she spoke to the room. "I know this might be a shock for all of you," she said, meeting the eyes of each executive. "But this is the change that needed to happen. For too long, this company has been run into the ground by people who were more interested in their own egos than in the well-being of the company itself. Well, I'm here to change that." Her words hung in the air, and she could feel the weight of them settle into the room. There was no going back now. She was in control. Michael was still silent, his hands trembling slightly as he shifted in his seat. Sarah could see the struggle inside him. He wanted to fight back, to challenge her, but he knew deep down that he couldn't. Not now. The truth was clear. Sarah was the new owner, and there was nothing he could do about it. One of the executives, a middle-aged man named Jack, cleared his throat, breaking the silence. But Sarah, he said cautiously, what do you intend to do with the company now? How do you plan to lead us forward? Sarah turned her gaze to him, her expression softening just a fraction. First, we need to rebuild trust, she said firmly. That means no more petty games, no more power struggles. We need to focus on what truly matters, making this company better for everyone involved. Her voice was calm, but there was an underlying strength in it that couldn't be ignored. Michael, still reeling, finally found his voice. You really think you can do this? Take over a company like this? Just because you own it doesn't mean you can run it. Sarah's eyes narrowed slightly, but she didn't let his words faze her. I know what I'm doing, Michael. I've been preparing for this for a long time. You just never noticed. The other executives shifted uncomfortably, sensing the power struggle that was unfolding between the two of them. Sarah could feel the weight of their expectations, but she didn't let it overwhelm her. This was her moment, and she wasn't going to waste it. Michael's gaze finally shifted, his pride wounded. He opened his mouth to speak, but stopped short when Sarah raised a hand, signaling for him to hold his tongue. You've had your chance, Michael. Now it's my turn. She turned her attention back to the executives, her eyes scanning the room. We will be making some changes. There will be a new direction for this company, and it starts today. If you want to be a part of that, then welcome. If not, you can walk out the door. The room went silent again, the air thick with tension. But Sarah didn't waver. She was in control now, and they all knew it. Michael sat back in his chair, defeated. He knew he couldn't fight her. Not anymore. For the first time, he truly understood the power of underestimating someone. The same woman he had mocked, belittled, and dismissed was now the one who held the future of the company in her hands. And he was powerless to stop her. The days following the meeting were a whirlwind for Sarah. The atmosphere in the office had shifted completely. Her announcement had sent shockwaves through the company, and the executives, still processing the news, were now looking to her for guidance. Sarah had always known this day would come, but now that it was here, she was determined to prove that she was more than capable of leading. She walked through the office the next morning, her footsteps echoing on the polished floor. The employees, who had once whispered about her behind her back, now watched her with a mix of curiosity and respect. They were still unsure what to make of her sudden rise, but one thing was clear. Sarah wasn't going to be easily ignored anymore. As she entered her office, she was met by her assistant, Clara, who had been with the company for years. Clara looked up at Sarah with a nervous smile. Good morning, Sarah, she said. I just wanted to let you know that the board is waiting for you in the conference room. They've been asking for updates on the new direction for the company. Sarah nodded and smiled back. Thank you, Clara. I'll be right there. As she walked toward the conference room, Sarah could feel the weight of the responsibility settling on her shoulders. The board members had been loyal to Michael for years, and now they had to answer to her. She wasn't naive enough to think they would welcome the change with open arms, but Sarah was ready. The door to the conference room opened, and the room fell silent as she stepped inside. The board members, once her superiors, now regarded her with a mix of uncertainty and expectation. They had heard the rumors, but now they were face to face with the new owner. Sarah took her seat at the head of the table, and without hesitation, she began speaking. I know many of you are uncertain about the future of this company, she started, her voice steady. But I'm here to tell you that things are going to change. For the better. There was a quiet murmur among the board members, but Sarah continued, unwavering. I've seen how things have been run, and I'm not satisfied. This company has been stagnant for too long, and it's time for a fresh start. One of the board members, a middle-aged man named Richard, cleared his throat. Sarah, we respect your vision, but do you really think you can turn this company around that quickly? Michael has been in charge for over a decade. This won't be easy. Sarah met Richard's gaze with a calm but firm expression. I don't expect it to be easy, she said. But I do expect results. And I'm not here to waste time. The room went silent again. Sarah could see the skepticism in their eyes, But she knew this was her moment to prove herself. "We're going to start by restructuring the company," she continued. "We'll focus on innovation, customer satisfaction, and, most importantly, we'll rebuild trust within this organization. Trust between management and employees. Trust with our clients. And trust with the community." Sarah paused for a moment, letting her words sink in. She could feel the eyes of the board members on her, but she stood tall, unshaken. "This isn't just about business," she added. "It's about doing what's right. I'm not here to play politics or to protect anyone's ego. I'm here to make this company the best it can be. And that starts with honesty, integrity, and hard work." As Sarah finished speaking, there was a long silence in the room. The board members exchanged glances, unsure of how to respond. Finally, Richard spoke again, his tone softer this time. "We may not agree on everything, but we'll give you the chance to prove yourself, Sarah." Sarah nodded, grateful for the opportunity. "Thank you, Richard. I won't let you down." As she left the conference room, she could feel the weight of the challenge ahead of her. But she was ready. This was her company now, and she would do whatever it took to lead it to success. The next few weeks were a blur of meetings, decisions, and changes. Sarah worked tirelessly, putting together a new team and implementing her vision for the company. Slowly but surely, things began to turn around. The employees, once hesitant, started to buy into her vision. The board, though still skeptical, started to see the results. Sarah knew that she had a long way to go, but she was more determined than ever to prove that she was the right person for the job. She had already proved her worth to herself. Now, it was time to prove it to everyone else. In the weeks that followed, Sarah's changes began to take root. The energy in the office was noticeably different. What had once been a quiet, tense atmosphere now buzzed with a new sense of purpose. Employees who had once been passive, who had accepted the status quo, were now coming to Sarah with ideas and solutions. She had created a space where their voices were heard, where they felt like they mattered. It wasn't always easy. Some of the older executives were slow to adapt, clinging to their old ways of doing business. Michael, still licking his wounds from the shock of Sarah's takeover, was one of the most resistant to change. He would often question Sarah's decisions behind closed doors, trying to undermine her authority, but she never let it bother her. She knew exactly what she was doing, and the results spoke for themselves. One morning, Sarah called a meeting with the entire leadership team. It was time to take stock of how far they had come and to plan for the future. She walked into the conference room with a sense of calm determination. The room grew quiet as she took her seat at the head of the table. Michael, seated across from her, avoided making eye contact. The other executives, while still a bit wary, were beginning to warm to Sarah's leadership. "I want to thank everyone for their hard work over the past few weeks," Sarah began, her voice steady and confident. "We've made a lot of progress, but there's still much more to do. We've set the foundation, but now we need to build on it." She paused, looking around the table. "We need to innovate. We need to be bold. We need to take risks." Michael finally spoke up, his voice laced with skepticism. "Innovate? Sarah, this company has been in business for years. We've done things a certain way for a reason." Sarah turned her gaze toward him, her expression calm but firm. "That's exactly why we need to change. Doing things the same way we always have is what got us here. We've stagnated." There was a slight tension in the air as Michael sat back, arms crossed. Sarah could see the gears turning in his head, but she didn't let it rattle her. This was part of the process. "We're going to start by looking at our products and services with fresh eyes," she continued. "We're going to ask ourselves, how can we do better? How can we serve our customers more effectively? How can we lead the industry instead of following it?" There was a noticeable shift in the room. The executives were no longer just listening, they were engaging. They were asking questions, brainstorming ideas. Michael, though still uncertain, seemed to be slowly coming around. Sarah's vision was becoming their vision. The rest of the meeting was filled with action plans, timelines, and strategies. It was clear that Sarah wasn't just giving orders, she was leading a team that was finally beginning to trust her. As the meeting came to a close, Sarah stood up, her eyes scanning the room one last time. "We've got a lot of work ahead of us," she said, "but I know we can do it. I believe in every one of you. Now let's go out there and show the world what we're capable of." The room erupted in a round of applause, and for the first time, Sarah felt the full weight of the journey ahead of her. This was only the beginning. And while there would be challenges, she was ready. She had proven to herself and to everyone around her that she had what it took to lead. And she wasn't going to stop now. As the weeks went by, Sarah's leadership continued to make an undeniable impact on the company. The changes she had implemented were starting to show results, and the employees who had once doubted her were now fully on board with her vision. The culture in the office had shifted from one of complacency to one of excitement and collaboration. Every day brought new challenges, but Sarah was no longer intimidated. She thrived on the pressure, pushing herself and her team to be better every single day. One afternoon, Sarah was walking through the office when she overheard a conversation between two employees. "Have you seen how much things have changed since Sarah took over?" one of them asked. "I didn't think she could do it at first, but now, it's like the whole company is buzzing with energy." Sarah smiled to herself. It wasn't the kind of recognition she craved, but it was the kind that mattered, the kind that came from the employees she had fought so hard to earn the respect of. She continued on her way, making her way to the conference room for another meeting with the board. When she entered, the board members were already seated, their faces a mixture of anticipation and curiosity. Sarah had proven herself in many ways, but this meeting was going to be different. She was going to take the next step in her plan. As she sat at the head of the table, she could feel the weight of their gaze on her. Michael was absent today. He had been taking some time away from the office after his initial shock wore off. Sarah had no doubts that he was watching her from the sidelines, waiting for her to fail. But she wasn't going to let that happen. "Good afternoon, everyone," Sarah said, her voice calm but firm. "We've made great progress so far, but now it's time to take the next step. We need to start looking at new markets, new ways to innovate, and new opportunities to grow." The board members exchanged glances, some of them clearly uncertain. "What do you have in mind?" Richard, one of the senior board members, asked. Sarah smiled. "We need to expand our reach. Our competitors have already started to tap into international markets, and we're falling behind. It's time we take that step too." A murmur of surprise rippled through the room. "International?" one of the executives asked. "Do you think we're ready for that?" Sarah nodded confidently. "Absolutely. We've already started the groundwork with our new product lines, and the feedback we've been getting from clients has been overwhelmingly positive. We've built a solid foundation here, but we can't afford to sit on our laurels. It's time to think big." The room was silent for a moment as the executives processed her words. Finally, Richard spoke. "You've got guts, Sarah. I'll give you that. If anyone can pull this off, it's you." Sarah's smile widened. "Thank you, Richard. But this isn't just about me. It's about all of us. We need to work together if we're going to make this happen." The meeting continued for another hour as Sarah outlined her strategy for the international expansion. The board members were skeptical at first, but as Sarah walked them through the numbers, the market analysis, and the steps required to enter these new markets, their doubts began to fade. By the end of the meeting, the board had given their approval to move forward with the plan. Sarah left the meeting feeling a surge of pride. This was the next chapter, and she was ready to write it. As the day came to a close, Sarah found herself in her office, reviewing the plans for the international expansion. She couldn't help but think back to the day when she first took over the company. It felt like a lifetime ago, but at the same time, it felt like just the beginning. She had come so far, but there was still so much to do, and she was more determined than ever to make it happen. The phone rang, breaking her thoughts. It was Clara. "Sarah, I've got some good news," Clara said excitedly. "I just got off the phone with one of our top suppliers in Europe. They're interested in working with us, and they want to set up a meeting next month." Sarah's eyes lit up. "That's fantastic, Clara. We're on the right track." She leaned back in her chair, a sense of satisfaction settling over her. This was only the beginning, but Sarah knew she was on the path to success. The company was thriving under her leadership, and the world was about to take notice. As Sarah sat in her office, reviewing the progress of the international expansion, a sense of accomplishment washed over her. The company had come a long way since she took over, and the results were undeniable. But she knew there was still so much more to do. The road ahead would be challenging, but Sarah was no stranger to overcoming obstacles. She had already proven that she could turn the company around, and now it was time to take it global. Her thoughts were interrupted when Clara knocked on the door. "Sarah, we need you in the conference room." "The team from Europe is here for the meeting," Clara said, her voice filled with excitement. Sarah stood up, a smile playing on her lips. This was the moment she had been waiting for. The meeting with the European supplier was crucial to the success of the expansion, and Sarah was ready to make it happen. She walked with purpose down the hallway, her mind focused on the presentation she had prepared. As she entered the conference room, she was greeted by the representatives from the European supplier. They were a group of serious-looking men and women in business suits, their eyes scanning the room with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. Sarah took a deep breath and confidently introduced herself. "Good morning, everyone. I'm Sarah Johnson, the new CEO of this company. Thank you for taking the time to meet with us today." The representatives exchanged glances, clearly impressed by her presence. Sarah could tell that they weren't used to seeing a woman in charge, especially not in the world of high-stakes business deals. But she wasn't about to let that stop her. "We've done our research," Sarah continued, "and we believe that your company is the perfect partner for our expansion into the European market. We've already laid the groundwork, and we're ready to move forward." The representatives listened carefully as Sarah outlined her vision for the partnership. She spoke with authority, her words clear and confident, and she could see that they were beginning to take her seriously. By the end of the meeting, the deal was set. The European supplier had agreed to work with Sarah's company, and they would begin the process of establishing a presence in Europe. As Sarah left the conference room, she couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. This was a major victory, not just for her, but for the entire company. It was proof that her leadership had taken them to new heights, and that they were now on the map as a global contender. Over the next few months, Sarah continued to push the company forward. She implemented new strategies, streamlined operations, and focused on customer satisfaction. The results were staggering. Profits were up, employee morale was higher than ever, and the company's reputation was growing. But despite all the success, Sarah knew that there were still challenges ahead. Michael, still bitter about losing control of the company, had been making subtle attempts to undermine her efforts. He would question her decisions in private, making snide remarks to anyone who would listen. But Sarah refused to let him shake her confidence. She had proven herself time and time again, and she wasn't about to let one man's bitterness stand in her way. One day, Michael cornered Sarah in the hallway, his face twisted with frustration. "You think you've won, don't you?" he sneered. "You think you've turned this company around, but it's only a matter of time before you fail. You don't belong here, Sarah. You never did." Sarah looked him in the eye, unflinching. "I've been here all along, Michael. I never left, and I'm not going anywhere. This company is mine now, and I will lead it to success." Michael scowled, clearly taken aback by her unwavering confidence. He opened his mouth to say something else, but Sarah held up a hand, stopping him in his tracks. "I've given you enough chances, Michael. It's time to move on." And with that, she walked away, leaving Michael standing in the hallway, fuming with anger. Sarah had won. She had taken the company from the brink of collapse to the global stage, and she wasn't about to let anyone, least of all Michael, take that from her. As she sat in her office later that day, looking out at the city skyline, Sarah couldn't help but reflect on how far she had come. The road had been long, and there had been many obstacles along the way. But she had persevered, and now, the company was stronger than ever. The journey wasn't over. There would be more challenges ahead, but Sarah was ready for them. She had proven her worth, and she wasn't going to stop now. Months passed, and Sarah's leadership continued to bring results that exceeded everyone's expectations. The company was not only recovering, but thriving. Profits were soaring, the company's reputation was stronger than ever, and Sarah had successfully secured their position in international markets. The team she had built was growing more cohesive, and the employees were proud to be part of something bigger than just a company. They were part of a movement. Sarah stood at the forefront of that change, but she was never content to rest on her laurels. Every victory was another opportunity to push for more, to do better, and to continue building the legacy she had started. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. There were still those who resisted change, who longed for the days when they held all the power. Michael, despite his quiet departure from active leadership, remained a thorn in Sarah's side. He would make his presence known through subtle attempts to sabotage her work, whether by undermining her decisions in private meetings or casting doubt on her leadership when given the chance. Yet, Sarah remained unfazed. She had dealt with his resistance for far too long to let it distract her now. One day, Sarah received an unexpected invitation to a high-profile business event in New York City. It was an exclusive gathering of top business leaders, and the theme was Innovation in Leadership. The event was known for attracting some of the most influential figures in the business world, and Sarah knew this was a golden opportunity to solidify her position as a leader not just in her company, but in the industry. She decided to attend, knowing that this could be a pivotal moment for both her personal growth and the future of her company. On the day of the event, Sarah stood in front of the mirror in her hotel room, adjusting her blazer. She looked at her reflection, feeling a sense of calm resolve. She had come a long way from the quiet employee who had once been dismissed by everyone around her. Now, she was a force to be reckoned with. She was ready to face the world. When Sarah arrived at the event, the room was buzzing with conversation. Business executives from all over the world were gathered, exchanging ideas and discussing the latest trends in leadership and innovation. As she made her way through the crowd, Sarah noticed several familiar faces, people she had worked with in the past, some of whom had doubted her abilities when she first started. But now, as she confidently walked through the room, it was clear that they had all changed their tune. They respected her, they admired her, and they were eager to hear what she had to say. The event kicked off with a keynote speaker, a prominent figure in the business world known for his success in scaling global companies. Sarah listened intently, taking in his insights and strategies, but she couldn't help but think about how much she had already accomplished in such a short time. Her company was growing, and she had already implemented many of the strategies the speaker was discussing. But Sarah knew that, in order to continue leading, she had to keep pushing herself. After the keynote, there was a panel discussion, and Sarah was invited to participate. As she took her seat, she could feel the eyes of the audience on her. She wasn't just another participant. She was a leader, a trailblazer, and she had a message to share. The moderator asked the panelists about the challenges of leading through change, and Sarah didn't hesitate. The key to leadership in times of change is to embrace uncertainty, she said, her voice steady and clear. Change is inevitable, and the most successful leaders are the ones who not only adapt, but who drive change themselves. The challenge is not in the change, it's in how you respond to it. The audience nodded in agreement, and Sarah could see that her words were resonating. She spoke about the importance of transparency, innovation, and fostering a culture where employees felt empowered to contribute their ideas. By the end of the panel, it was clear that Sarah had made an impression. As the event came to a close, several people approached her, eager to discuss potential collaborations and opportunities. Sarah left the event feeling invigorated. It was moments like this that reminded her why she had fought so hard to get to this point. She had built something truly special, and now, the world was starting to take notice. Back at the office the next week, Sarah's team was excited about the new opportunities that had come from the event. It wasn't just about the deals and partnerships. It was about the recognition that came with being a leader who had truly earned her place at the table. The company was in a new chapter now, one that Sarah had written herself. And as she looked out of her office window, she knew that this was just the beginning. Months passed, and Sarah's leadership continued to transform the company. What once seemed like a far-fetched dream was now becoming a reality. The international expansion had taken off, and the partnerships she had forged were paying off in ways no one could have predicted. The team she had built was working with a renewed sense of purpose, and the company was growing faster than ever. Yet, despite the success, Sarah remained grounded. She never let the praise or the recognition distract her from the mission at hand. There were always new challenges, new opportunities, and Sarah was determined to keep pushing the company forward. One afternoon, Sarah sat in her office, looking out at the city skyline. She thought back to the days when she was just an employee, when Michael and others had doubted her abilities. She had come a long way since then, but she knew that the journey wasn't over. There was always more to do. She picked up the phone, dialing a number she hadn't called in years. It rang twice before the familiar voice on the other end answered. "Sarah," the voice said, "I wasn't expecting to hear from you." "I know," Sarah replied, her voice steady. "But I think it's time we talk." The voice paused for a moment, then responded, "You're calling about the company, aren't you?" "Yes," Sarah said. "I think it's time we discuss some new possibilities." The voice on the other end was silent for a moment, then spoke slowly. "What are you proposing?" Sarah's eyes sparkled with determination. "I'm proposing that we take things to the next level. We've already proven ourselves in the industry, but now it's time to take on even bigger challenges. It's time to think about the future, and I want you to be a part of that." The person on the other end of the line didn't respond right away, but Sarah knew they were considering it. She had always been able to make things happen, and this time would be no different. After a long pause, the voice said, "All right, I'm in. Let's talk details." Sarah smiled, feeling a sense of accomplishment wash over her. She had just secured another key partnership that would take the company to new heights. As she hung up the phone, she leaned back in her chair, taking a deep breath. This was it. She had built something from the ground up, and now it was more than just a company. It was a force to be reckoned with. In the following weeks, Sarah continued to implement her plans for growth. She worked closely with the new partner, ensuring that every step was taken with precision and care. The team was on board, and the company was ready to move forward with its most ambitious project yet. The challenges were immense, but Sarah had faced much worse and come out stronger on the other side. As the project progressed, Sarah found herself reflecting on her journey once more. She had come from a place where she was dismissed, underestimated, and overlooked. But now, she was the one leading the charge, the one making the decisions that would shape the future of the company. The thought made her smile. She had proven herself, not just to others, but to herself. And she wasn't done yet. One morning, Sarah was in a meeting with the executive team when Michael unexpectedly showed up. He had been away for a while, but now, he was back, looking as arrogant as ever. Sarah greeted him with a calm, measured smile. "Michael," she said, "it's been a while." He didn't respond immediately, but Sarah could see the flicker of resentment in his eyes. He wasn't happy to be here, but Sarah wasn't worried. She had nothing to prove to him anymore. "I see things are going well for you," Michael said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "You've really turned this place around, haven't you?" Sarah nodded. "Yes, I have." Michael's eyes narrowed. "You're not going to stop, are you?" Sarah leaned forward slightly, her gaze unwavering. "No, I'm just getting started." Michael didn't say anything else. The meeting went on, and as the discussion unfolded, it became clear that Sarah was in full control. She had outlasted Michael's attempts to undermine her, and now, she was the one calling the shots. As the meeting concluded, Sarah stood up, ready to move on to the next challenge. She knew that Michael's time was over, and her time had only just begun. She had taken the company to the next level, and she was determined to keep going, no matter what obstacles lay ahead. With a final glance at Michael, Sarah walked out of the room, confident and resolute. The future was hers, and she was ready to face it head on.